I'm Vin.
I'm sorry.
That's Booby.
No, that's not.
That's not.
Booby's here.
Our set is kind of different because we're currently shooting
Do you want me to try to
an
change
Oscar-worthy miniseries. Yeah, I got it.
Oh, you got it.
We're currently shooting an Oscar-worthy miniseries called The Quarantine Chronicles. And so episode 1 is already there for the general public.
Yep.
And then
It's right up on the channel. Just search
it's on the
for-
channel. Just put Quarantine Chronicles in there. And then after that, we're gonna have $5. So if you're on Patreon, it's $5 at Patreon, or you can go to
PayPal's an
PayPal, vidandstorymerch@gmail.com, and you, dear listener, will be able to watch it.
I'm going to be recording again soon.
Brisme the Jedi says, good script, Vin. Awesome acting, sorry.
Ta-da!
Leo the Village says, Johan should have his own series called Patient Zero.
Patient Zero.
This, however, is the band Alogon.
Yes.
This is a band that is from Italy. Viva Italy. Viva
Okay.
Italia. Yeah, I was checking with these guys. I'm like, man, you guys okay? You guys doing good?
Yeah.
Thankfully, bless God, they are doing good.
Well, that's good.
But they're a prog metal band from Italy. If you, dear listener, have a band that you're a part of or that you're doing PR for, reach out to us.
Exposure.
vidandstory@gmail.com. Reach out to us and we'll discuss the particulars of how to do that. You guys have seen the little butterfly pic with the question mark that was put up on Instagram. That is this band. And again, if you're in a band and you want, you're curious about how to do promotion, etc., get an interview set up for your band, all that jazz, vidandstory@gmail.com.
This is our first time listen with them. So
First time listen. This is their single, Omen 2 Resonance is the name of the song. I've been really itching to hear this band, so here we are.
Okay, ready? And go.
New connection.
an interesting ending. That was an interesting way to end it, like that.
Well, the name of their whole album is called Chrysalis.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I didn't know that. I'm saying yeah, like I knew that, but I didn't know that. But just usually when a song ends, boom, it has like an abrupt. But then they like shot out into this like.
Well, yeah, I think this is probably. I didn't get to ask them. I'll ask them later, but I think this is probably like a concept record about like transformation. You know, because what I posted on Instagram was the picture of the butterfly.
Yeah,
right?
I've seen it right there. Yep.
That's the Chrysalis, right? When they're in the thing and then it comes out. So the name of the record is Chrysalis. So I think there's probably a. That's pretty crazy, huh?
Oh gosh.
I think there's probably like a theme of the record of like the transformation and becoming a new person or a new self or whatever, which kind of it talks about that the day has come for them to find death, the same fate encountered by my old self. Now I have a purpose. I found my reason through this faith, and so there's and then the cover of the record is like this butterfly coming out of a chrysalis,
which I'm sure you'll see on the thumbnail.
and then there's a Greek. Well, I'm not sure because I like the picture of the band.
I can do both.
There's like a Greek thing here, which I'm assuming is the name of their band, Alogon. I think you got an alpha and that's probably that. So I think probably the record is about the transformation that people go through and all that.
So do you think that they're religious?
Well, I'm not
fortress and faith.
I'm not sure. Well, I mean, they're from Italy.
Yeah.
Right, which is the seat of, the Vatican, Roman Catholicism. So I don't know if they're religious, but I think it would probably be impossible to not be religious when your grounds, it'd be like being a Muslim in Saudi Arabia. You know what I mean? Like, that's just part of your life, I would assume, in Italy. I'm not sure, but it looks like
where's Behemoth from?
They're in, they're
but
Polish.
They're in the same situation, right? It's like...
Well, yeah, they're Polish, and the Catholic Church is pretty aggressive over there. I agree. Speaking of the Catholic Church, shout out to Jake, buddy. Praying for you, man. But
shout out to Pony.
Well, Jake's got some COVID-like symptoms.
Oh, no.
Yeah. He's Jake, though. Nothing's going to happen to Jake.
I'm sure Pony will take good care of you.
A couple days off of work, probably, inshallah. So I don't know if they're religious or if they're Christian or whatever. I just think that if you're in Italy, you probably are surrounded and inundated with religion, and particularly Christianity, because he specifically talks about let them burn until their light outshines a fractal God.
I love the word
carrying...
fractal, and I've always loved the word fractal.
Oh, there you go.
But what does it mean, fractal God?
Fractal God carrying their sins. So that to me is
fractal is like pieces, right?
Christian God. Yeah. It's all it's all broken up, but it still kind of makes it's broken pieces that still make a pattern.
Well, it's like a stained glass.
Yeah, right. Which
or mosaic.
Yeah, and I think stained glass I think is probably the good catch. Let them burn until their light outshines a fractal God carrying their sins, which is, I'm assuming, stained glass, Jesus and all that jazz. So,
yes, because the Catholic Church usually has bunches of those.
Oh yeah, I remember in St. Andrew's Catholic School where they took us to the chapel, and it was this big thing, like we're going to, because we've never been in the chapel. And they started talking about the stained glass and how it works and the light and all that. I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, we were, evangelical Protestant, what do you call that? You're back Pentecostal. Yeah. So there was none of that. You know what I mean? So I was like, hey, man, how come we don't have that in our church? My mom was like, we don't need that.
We don't need that. I wouldn't have even been able to go where you went. Not stepping foot in the Catholic Church.
Yeah. So it's interesting though, because I'm not seeing like a Nergal kind of like a complete repudiation of Christianity.
No. I mean, I thought it sounded like they were religious in some ways. I did have a question. Scroll up to the top. Well, I guess I'll wait and we'll go over it. I'm sure I'll find it once we are going over it because I kind of lost my spot now.
Lines bent tracing new connections. They won't bear another travesty. Facing angst, serenity, descent as a new horizon showed me meaning through a lustful retaliation, finding my new self. So he mentions a lustful retaliation, and then in the middle he says, no, she won't be gone. She won't be leaving soon. She must have known. She should have thrown it all away. He won't be gone. He won't be leaving soon. He must have known. He should have thrown it all away. It won't be gone. It won't be leaving soon. It must have known. It should have thrown it all away. So there's a she, a he, and an it. And then there's an I. I won't be gone. I won't be leaving soon. I must have known. I should have thrown it all. Away from these creatures reaching out from my scarred skin. Let them burn until their light outshines a fractal God carrying their sins. This is an interesting line though when it says, away from these creatures reaching out from my scarred skin.
Yeah.
Because that's almost
from my scarred
that's
skin.
almost like Jesus speaking. You know what I mean? Like the people that have made a religion out of him. You know, and maybe that's Jesus saying, I didn't intend for these people to do all this stuff in my name based on my sacrifice. And it's almost kind of like Jesus is repudiating their brand of Christianity. Let them burn until their light outshines a fractal God carrying their sins. So this is a pretty complex song lyrically because there's a lot of ways you could go with it.
It was talking about. It seemed like because. Okay, it was talking about consent, but I thought it said something about consent and God were kind of like close together.
Yeah, he did say that. He said godly given consent.
Yeah.
Clenched fist, grim demise, no mercy within his eyes. They are fire now, godly given consent.
What do they mean?
And then he talks about consent came from down below. Just let the weapons glorify me. Despite not being the victim, I'll repent for my shortcoming. Wait, is it despite not being the victim or despite being the victim? Because that changes things. Hold on. Lustful retaliation, clenched fists. It's in the next stanza.
I am fire now.
Yeah. Okay, he's saying despite not being the victim, which is what the lyrics say there too.
Yep.
Okay, so he's saying, despite not being the victim, I'll repent for my shortcoming. Serving a greater picture, I'll be a cleansing fire like you used to be. So,
I don't understand these lyrics. I keep thinking, I feel like I keep grasping something and then I lose it.
well, I mean, like I said, the lyrics are pretty complex here. Because
Yeah.
it seems at the top he's saying that it's almost like he's redefining religion for himself. And when it says lustful retaliation, I think, you know, it's like maybe breaking one of the 7 deadly sins, you know, lust, was an act of retaliation against the religion as a whole. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, that's one of the 7 deadly sins? Yeah, I'll jump into it, which then kind of relates to the she, he, it, I. I think consent came down from below means that just let the weapons glorify me, despite not being the victim, I'll repent for my shortcoming. I think it's talking about, like, what people do in the name of religion, maybe, but it says consent came down from down below, meaning it didn't come from above.
Yeah.
It didn't come from God. Like the permission to do these horrible things, maybe, you know, the weapons, didn't come from God. It came from your own thought processes or whatever.
So let's say that's what it is. Let's say it's consent came from down below. Like men within their own hearts decided that this was good, and then they just let the weapons glorify me. Like they wanted to glorify themselves using the weapons. Despite not being the victim, I'll repent for my shortcomings.
Serving a greater picture. Maybe he's, in this situation, he's not the victim, he's the perpetrator, so he'll repent of his shortcoming. Not really sure why you'd have to say despite there, but I mean, also keep in mind, English is not the first language.
That's what I was just going to ask you.
So, this is, although, I mean, I don't know, because I still think it makes sense. Either way, I still think it makes sense. Because I think it's an ironic way of talking about blaming the victim, which religious people do a ton. I mean, full disclosure, if you're new to the channel, we're hardcore Christians, Bible-believing, Genesis to Revelation Christians. However, it is clear that in a lot of situations, especially with the Catholic Church, unfortunately, there is a lot of victim blaming. So I think it's an ironic use of the term, despite not being the victim, because he'll basically say, usually you guys are the ones telling the victims to repent. But even though I'm the perpetrator, I'm going to go ahead and repent for my shortcoming, I think is the argument. Which you kind of have to be familiar with how religious people operate to make sense of that line. But I think that that's where he's going, inshallah.
Speaking of victim, you know what? Jimmy Dore was playing the other day, and they were talking about somebody wrote in a comment and they said that people should rally together and call the local restaurants and tell them to put local domestic abuse violence hotline numbers on the boxes of the delivery stuff. Wouldn't that be a good idea? Because there are people that could be in those situations. They can't Google the number.
I saw something about London or something where like domestic cases have spiked like 14%.
Of course they have.
I'm so confused by that.
What do you mean?
Well, because me and you stated, like since we've been married, like we've constructed our lives like we're literally around each other 24 hours a day.
Yes.
And there's no like
yes, but
we're spending too much time.
You don't have a history of violence against women. There are some people that are already their relationship is already there. So the only thing that's
keeping him from smacking up his wife is the fact that he goes to work?
Yeah, I think so. I think that is the case in a lot.
That's crazy.
They can get away from each other.
That's so crazy to me.
And maybe maybe she's sick and tired of him, and then she bap, and then he just can't,
Yeah, it's crazy. That's crazy.
I think I thought that was a good idea to put the numbers on the boxes.
It is a good. I'm always behind the 8 ball on that stuff. I just can't. It's very hard for me to understand. And the funny thing is, I can understand the kid part about it, like abusing the kid, because we're socialized to basically only have an hour or two with our kids a day, and so that kind of makes sense to me. But like your spouse, like, shouldn't there be a whole bunch of domestic violence issues then with retirees because they're all staying home? You see what I'm saying?
Well,
what?
I think by that time, I feel like you're older by that time. You've kind of calmed down, and your reactions to things are not as extreme as when you're young.
Yeah. Yeah. Clenched fists, grim demise, no mercy within his eyes. They are fire now, godly giving consent. That's, burning people at the stake. I'll tell you something. There's nothing more unyielding than a religious person.
Oh my gosh. Okay, sorry. Can I say this?
Yeah.
So back up here, it said consent came from down below. Now over here, clenched fist, grim demise, no mercy within his eyes. They are fire now, godly given consent. Like he has come to the resolution that he has been given godly given consent, even though that's not the case. It came from below.
Right.
Wow.
That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah. Wow.
We
okay.
gotta talk to these guys and say, what
what were you saying before I interrupted you?
Well, there's nothing more unyielding and unmerciful than a religious person on the way to go and execute God's justice.
Oh gosh.
there's nothing you can.
Yeah, because I feel like it has like this strange way of getting past your conscience.
Right.
Because
Right. Well,
I'm doing this for God.
But it's like Peterson said that, and I don't know where Peterson's at as far as the existence of God goes, but at least at this part, he would not come out and say he believed in God, but he said that the God concept was very useful because if you have all these hierarchical structures, so usually the man runs his household, and then you've got outside of that, you've got the governor that has the authority, but then in the old days prior to democracy, which is kind of a funny statement, you had kings. And then the concept was, well, who does a king report to? Because everybody reports to somebody, but then if you've got this guy that's got the absolute rule, who does the king report to? And then in our evolution, we figured out, let's say he reports to God, and so the king reports to God, and so that way we still have a shot at accountability or whatever. So when the ultimate authority gives you permission to do horrible
it's
evil,
over.
Khalas, it's over.
Done.
It's over. And so there's nothing more unyielding than a person who believes that they've been given a divine mandate to go and raise hell.
I saw that movie, Frailty.
That's a bad example because in that situation he was right.
Oh yeah, that's right.
They were all evil.
God did give him consent.
I'll be the cleansing fire like you used to be. And then it says, my day has come for me to find rest. My hope comes from him. My hope comes from him. No need to confess, for he's my fortress, the fire that I keep inside my chest. The day has come for them to find death. The same fate encounter. See, now this is kind of the turning point. This is the ultimate crisis point of the song. And I feel like you have to listen to the whole album to figure out what's going on. But when he says he, my hope comes from him, no need to confess, which again is a backdrop of Catholicism where In Catholicism, you confess to another man your sins
Yep.
and yada, yada, yada. And he never confesses to you, so it creates this very strange power dynamic where he knows all your dirt, but you don't know any of his. The day has come for me to find rest. My hope comes from him. No need to confess. So here's the issue. When he says him, is he talking about, okay, I've got a version of God that is different from your guys' horrible, evil version of God, and in that case, I don't care what any of you guys have to say? Or is the him the new person that he is now? So, like, he's talking about himself kind of in the third person, but he's really saying his hope is completely in himself because he's a new person.
See, I didn't think that this was a turning point in the song, like, as we're going through the lyrics. To me, it just sounds like he's completely given over to this idea now. He doesn't even need to confess because...
What idea?
This idea that he can go and kill other people in the name of God. So he's completely given over into it. My hope comes from him. No need to confess, for he's my fortress, the fire that I keep in my chest. The day has come for them to find death, the same fate encountered by my old self.
Right, so that's the issue there, because it's not a literal death. Because he's still alive.
Maybe his old self was the part that would have a bit of guilt for what he was doing.
Well,
now I have a purpose. I found my reason through this faith.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, he's using the term death in an obviously metaphorical sense here. So, the day has come for them to find death. Meaning, what? There's something that he's going to do that's going to put them in the situation that he was in when he died to his old self.
Yeah.
So, that's what I'm saying. So, when he says
And
my
who
hope...
do you think the them is?
Well, them would be religious people that are still in that system. So, when it says my hope comes from him, I'm not particularly certain that he's talking about God. He might be referring to himself in the third person. He might be saying, my hope comes from myself. I don't need to confess anything to you because your entire system is BS in the first place. And, you know, he's my fortress, the fire that I keep inside of my chest, you know, the will to do it. Or it could be God. He could be saying, I have found a new way to look at God and look at faith that's different from your guys's, but this one is better. And it absolves you of all these guilt cycles that everybody is in. And I'm going to, in destroying your religion, give you a new shot at life. And then it's, I found my reason through this faith, which is kind of a very good play on words because most people put faith and reason on like complete diametric opposites of each other. In my mind, reason and faith are the one leads necessarily to the other because we're not omniscient beings.
Does it seem weird to you at all that he's talking about finding purpose and reason through faith and hope and fire in his chest, but then he talks about the scarred skin? Creatures reaching from his scarred skin.
Well, again, if he's speaking as Jesus here, it makes sense. It's Jesus saying all these horrible things that people have done in the name of me or in the name of my sacrifice, scarred skin, was wrong. Like I didn't mean for that to happen.
Yikes.
So, which of course we would agree with. Like we don't believe that you can do jihad in the name of Christ in any consistent way. Like you can't harm somebody in the name of Christ in any consistent way.
Yeah.
So that all makes sense, but this is and again, I found my reason through it. I actually like this. Give me reason through this faith. Give me reason through this. I like that because a lot of people. Yeah, I had this conversation in the last fireside. Like, faith is what happens when you're not an omniscient being, and you've got to believe something. And what I mean by that is, if you get on a plane, that's an act of faith, but it's also an act of reason. You're doing a lot of logical deductions when you get on that plane.
Every aspect of your life is faith. So when you fall asleep at night, you have faith that you're going to wake up in the morning. You have faith that your heart's going to keep beating and that your breath is going to keep coming to you.
Right.
Like you have faith in all those things.
You don't have certain knowledge.
No, you don't. You have faith. And then when you wake up in the morning, you step out of bed, you have to have faith that the floor is going to hold you and it's going to continue to hold you to the bed. You're going to have faith that you're going to be able to still breathe. You're going to have faith that you can see when you get in. Like there's so much stuff that start to finish, but then I think that we don't realize.
And when it comes to God, all of a sudden we're supposed to have certainty.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I was saying. Like, if you get on a 747, there's a lot of faith there. You got faith that the mechanics did the right thing.
Oh
you got
my
faith
gosh.
that the pilot is not a terrorist and going to crash your plane inside of a mountain. You got faith that, there's a lot of faith that happens when you jump on that airplane. And so, but it's a reasoned faith. There's reasons behind it. You're like, well, look, this airline's been in, operation for 50 years. I don't think they're in the habit of hiring people who cheated on their flight school test or whatever.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, and the same thing with like you said, like, how do you know the second floor is not going to collapse? Well, I mean, you got pretty good reason to believe. Look, I've been in this house for 5 years, and all those days it works, so it's reasonable to assume it's going to work this day. But again, that's faith, because there's a gap between good reason and certainty. There's a gap in the middle, and that gap is faith. If you don't do that, then you literally would not be able to function in the world. You wouldn't be able to have relationships. You wouldn't be able to get on the plane.
Yeah, and it's so depressing too. Like, how are you going to get up? Like, if everything feels like if you lose all faith in everything, then how do you function? How do you move on in life? And how do you see a bright tomorrow, or how do you see anything positive later on today, or any sort of hope? Like, if you have no faith, then you've lost all hope. And how can you? I don't know. That seems like such a horrible place to be in. And I think that there are people that are in those places, and I think that that's what kind of drives you to the end of yourself.
And the funny thing about reason is that reason is based on logical deductions, which means that you believe that the law of non-contradiction today is going to be the same law of contradiction tomorrow, of non-contradiction tomorrow. Where Bertrand Russell had these questions, these philosophical questions that he wanted answered. Bertrand Russell's famous atheist guy. And I'm not saying these guys are atheists, but the issue of I think it was induction. How do you know that the principles that govern the universe today are going to be uniform till tomorrow? You don't know that.
Right.
You believe in, so Russell's basically, he never came to a conclusion. It was a very interesting book. It's like all these like philosophical problems that he felt were unanswered. And he says you don't know any of this stuff.
Right.
But on the other hand, you have religious people who make reason the enemy of belief. And so you have religious people who, and that's extremely dangerous. That's where you get, these prosperity people, whatever, fleecing the hell out of people, taking hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars for private jets and all that, because they've conditioned people. And all those guys in that milieu, there is not a very good primer on critical thinking and deductive reasoning at all.
Right.
And the reason for that is they know that if they do that, then people are going to say, well, wait a second. When she got sick, she went to the best doctor in the nation. When I got sick, he was telling me to send $500 for a healing. And so there's a lot of religious people that militate against reason. And call that lazy, unreasoning faith, pure faith, instead of the faith that we see. Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah, they put a primer on shutting off your mind.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And Jesus never did that. It's like the conversation with Aaron Robb, where he's like, Jesus said, just believe my bullshit and blah 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 blah. It's like, no, he didn't. Jesus literally said the opposite. John chapter 10. Do not believe me unless you see me doing things that nobody else has done. So.
Yep.
So you see there in the New Testament, there's a heavy primer on faith. There's a heavy primer on deductive reasoning. Read the book of Romans if you don't think so. And that's the reason that Christianity produced men like Augustine and Thomas Aquinas and Jonathan Edwards and Gottschalk and all the rest of these brilliant people. C.S. Lewis, G.K. Chesterton. I like that there's no hard dichotomy between faith and reason here, because I think without both, you end up with very, very dangerous ramifications.
Oh yeah.
And for anybody to deny that at the base level of their worldview that it's rooted in faith, to me is just, it's one of the things that's actually surprising to me that anybody would deny. Well, it's like we're talking to Aaron Rod. He was like, I don't know, I only believe in evidence. It was like, okay, so the Hammurabi Stella's in the Louvre. He goes, yeah. I'm like, how do you know that's the actual Hammurabi Stela? Well, we'd have to believe that they were lying. Right. So you believe them because you're not an omniscient.
Who was it that
you're not an
said
omniscient being.
No,
so
I don't have faith. I have strong
trust.
certainty.
I have confidence.
A strong confidence.
And then I did the etymological breakdown. Con being with and fide being faith, confidence.
Who said that? Who was that with? Do you remember?
I don't know. I mean, it was originally a Saitan Bruggen Kate situation. We was debating these guys, but anyway, this isn't that type of conversation. But it's give me reason through this faith. I think is a very very provocative line. Very provocative line, especially in our current seats and Laban. Okay, what do you give the? What do you give?
8.9.
It's a 9.2 for me. There's some like mundane energy. It was really interesting because they're a prog band, so I was expecting a certain thing, but there is a lot of like not new metal-y, but like Mudvayne type riffage, which I thought was like threw me for a loop. I was like, oh, these guys are different.
Something about it reminded me of when I was a teenager and the type of music that we would listen to around like youth group and stuff. The voice,
Really?
the vocal style, where it sounded like it was coming through that like
tunnel type thing.
Yeah, there was so I don't know. It had a kind of a nostalgia to it that I enjoyed.
He did a lot vocally that was different. You know,
Yeah, was it the same vocalist the whole time?
Well, that's what I was gonna. That's a question I'd like answered because sometimes it sounded like what's that band that I like? I forgot the name of the band.
Corn.
No. It's hang on. Now I have to Google it.
Your computer's so slow. You should use mine.
To the glory of my right hand. Who is that?
Oh.
Hang on to the glory of my right hand. Can't believe I forgot that.
I know, because I can hear it. You're going to use my computer? Well, why ever would you do that, Vin?
That's actually my computer.
Oh, it's true.
Coheed
Right
Cambria. Yeah. Coheed.
Oh, yeah, Dan.
Yeah,
Dan introduced us.
Had some Coheed, had some stuff. Okay, there you go. Check them out.
Yep. Buy their
Alogon,
merch.
Viva
Do they
Italy.
have merch?
They should. Buy their merch. Then out.
Sorry, out.
Gone.